Hey guys, it's Gage from CFD Kingston, coming at you from the gym here. We're going to talk a bit about vertical pulling today. So this is our movement pattern workshop for the day. We're kind of talking about specifically the strict pull-up and the strict chin-up. In the hierarchy of vertical pulling movements, to me this would be the gold standard movement in this category. It's a personal favorite too. It's probably my favorite non-barbell exercise. I try to include it in almost every program that I work with. Aside from being a cultural staple in the military fitness world, pull-ups and chin-ups are a fantastic movement in their own right. And like I said, they rank towards my personal list of most beneficial movements. Before we dive in, I do want to clarify a bit what we're talking about and what we're not talking about here. So this workshop, the discussion and the suggestions therein are only meant to apply to the strict pull-up. So grasping the bar overhead, hanging from it, pulling your chin over the bar without excessive bouncing, swinging at the bottom, using any momentum, etc. So rather than get bogged down into the semantics of grip, whether we're using pronated grip, supinated grip, neutral grip, I'm just going to refer to all three as pull-ups for today. A lot of folks will talk about pronated as being pull-up, supinated as being chin-up, and neutral will usually just get that designation as being a neutral grip pull-up. So I think they're all good variations. There's lots of valid reasons for choosing one over the other. I wouldn't necessarily say any one is better or worse depending on your own particular situation. They're all fantastic, and identifying one as being better or only training one can only really be done on an individual basis. So today we're going to call everything a pull-up, regardless of which grip variation you choose. So I feel like this movement is really uniquely valuable and provides a lot of benefits that other movements don't provide. It comes with its own unique challenges too though. So what makes this movement pattern, this movement, the strict pull-up, so uniquely valuable for us? Personally, I can't think of any other movement that can be used so effectively in so many different settings or so many different programming objectives with so little equipment as the pull-up. Once you get to a certain level of proficiency with this movement pattern, it can be used in programming designs for mixed modal conditioning, muscular endurance, hypertrophy, and absolute strength, which is pretty cool. We don't really get that amount of flexibility from any other exercise, in my opinion. I love the flexibility of that movement, and I love how little specialized equipment we need for it. Pretty much just a bar to hang from and something to add load if you're at that point where you're looking to progress to weighted pull-ups. On top of that, the pull-up and its associated family of movements are the best indicator I know of to determine relative strength, our strength relative to our body weight. So unlike the primary barbell movements, which are great for lots of their own reasons, impressive pull-up numbers pretty much automatically imply a certain level of relative strength. This allows us to use the pull-up to achieve a number of desired training outcomes. For me, I'm always trying to maximize training economy and kind of get the most out of each movement I do. So choosing movements that can be the most bang for my buck when I'm training myself or writing programs is always it's just an important consideration when we're writing programs. Pull-up ability is a huge indicator of other factors as well. So to paraphrase Joe DeFranco on this one, he talks about the only three real reasons why someone wouldn't be good at strict pull-ups would be three things that most people would be trying to avoid: that they're injured, so they can't do them, they are weak, so they can't do them, or they have an elevated body weight. They can't do pull-ups for that reason. Remember what we said about pull-ups being a great indicator of relative strength. So on top of all those things, it is also just kind of the gold standard of vertical pulling patterns, a pattern that often is neglected or is comparatively weak to our pushing patterns. So now that we've sort of laid the ground rules on what we're talking about and some of the unique benefits of this movement, why you should do it, it's important to recognize the reality of training this movement as well. So the strict pull-up doesn't really play by the same rules as a lot of your other exercises. In a lot of compound barbell movements, for example, newer trainees can simply reduce the load according to their ability. It's pretty obvious. This isn't really an option for most people in training the pull-up. So it is possible via band assistance or a gravitron assisted pull-up machine to reduce the load. But strangely enough, in my experience, those things actually don't carry over that much to the full movement. The unique benefits of this movement mean that it must be trained in unique ways. So like all movements, ability with this movement exists on a continuum, a pretty broad one in this case. And most pull-up advice or pull-up programming prescriptions that I've seen They sort of exist in the middle of this continuum. So people who can handle a handful of reps for a few sets, right? That advice applies great for those folks, but it may not apply to folks on the opposite ends of the spectrum, which is what I would like to talk about today. A lot of people actually fall outside of the middle here. People who are struggling to get their first rep, or maybe they can do 1 or 2 reps, but they're struggling to really get rep proficiency in the pull-up. And then way on the other end, we have people who are looking to really push their numbers on the weighted pull-up, or to really push their muscular endurance on the pull-up body weight numbers as well. So we're going to focus on these 2 camps today for our movement pattern workshop. So first, let's talk a little bit about folks who are either trying to get that first rep, or they can handle 1 rep, maybe 2, maybe 3, but really getting to a point of doing multiple reps or multiple sets is a big challenge for them. If you're in this first group, I would advise you to go back and think about those 3 reasons we first talked about for why you may not be able to do a rep in the first place. So take an honest assessment of yourself here. If you fall into the category of injury or body composition limiting your pull-up ability, you probably have bigger fish to fry than worrying about how do I train my pull-up right now. Worry about getting that stuff sorted out before you start to dive in too much on the stuff we're going to talk about today. With that said, if you aren't in those categories and you're simply weak, well, it's not preferable to be weak, you can definitely work with that, and that's what we're going to chat about today. That's good, we can work with that. So, training for your first pull-up, let's chat about it. In my experience, rather than toiling away with banded pull-ups, the assisted pull-up machine, jumping pull-ups, anything like this, the best approach is a 3-factor model that combines isometric holes, negatives, and the right accessory work. So, those things are pretty much listed in order of importance here as well. Isometric holes. So what this would look like in the program. The first step towards getting your first pull-up will be the strength to hold yourself statically in 3 different positions on the bar. So I want you guys to start with flexed arm hang, chin over bar. You need to get strong enough to hold yourself here. Straight arm hang, hold yourself down here, hanging from the bar passively. And then finally, we need to develop some strength with upper arm parallel to the ground, sort of in between those 2 positions. So I would start by including those movements in your program. These can be like in a warm-up in between other movements. They actually won't be that taxing for you because you probably won't be able to hold yourself for that long. But start with chin over the bar proficiency, move towards hanging proficiency, and then get that in between proficiency. So once you've developed some ability to statically hold yourself above the bar, as well as from a straight arm and with a flexed arm in the middle, you can start to incorporate slowly lowering yourself from above the bar to a full hang. So if you have a pull-up bar low enough that you can do this on, you can just kind of jump yourself up, right? And then just slowly lower yourself down to straight arm. I would only introduce this once you feel somewhat strong isometrically in those other 3 positions, right? Before we introduce movement, I want you to be strong statically there. So slowly progress yourself on this via duration. So I would do sets for time. Do like a 10-second lowering, for example. You can count Mississippi's in your head or set up a timer within your view. And then progress the total time that you spend lowering yourself in the session. So the first week could be like 6 sets of 10 seconds. The next week, maybe you keep the same total duration, but you chop it up as 4 sets of 15 seconds, and so on and so forth. The last thing for this group would be to choose the right accessory work. Since you won't be able to do that much work on your isometric hold and your eccentrics, you will need to fill in the gaps a little bit. So you would be best served by focusing on heavy and strict lat pull downs. Use the same grip that you're trying to train the pull-up with, whether that's supinated, pronated, neutral. Focus on the 5 to 8 rep range. Keep them heavy, keep them strict, build lots of strength there, and then sprinkle in some higher rep horizontal pulling and upper back work. So that could be chest supported rows, dumbbell rows, face pulls, cable rows. Kind of depends what you have access to. Inverted rows or ring rows can be a really good tool here as well if you have the right setup for them. That you can provide some varying levels of difficulty on them as well. Progress on those 3 things and you would be surprised by how quickly you can get that first rep. Start with the isometrics, add in the eccentrics once you're ready, and just keep the accessory work in the whole time. time. Frequency is your friend here. Do the isometrics and the eccentrics as often as possible and keep the accessory work at maybe twice a week, and you'd be well on your way to getting that first pull-up or chin-up. Okay, so you've conquered your first pull-up. Congrats, this is a huge milestone. I'm really stoked for everyone who gets to this point. It's a huge goal for a lot of people. What comes next? If you're like most people, getting past that first rep can be pretty difficult, especially for female trainees. If you're like most folks, you can likely do several sets of a single rep at this point, but moving past this is becoming a problem. You're struggling to get 2 reps. This is a common occurrence, I won't stress too much about it. If you find yourself in this situation, traditional advice for sets and reps won't really apply to you. Instead, you need to focus on total volume and frequency of the small amount of work that you can do. So this would look a little different depending on what your overall training week is like, but let's say you are training 3 full body sessions a week. In this scenario, what you would do would be something like 7 to 10 sets of 1 rep on each training day. Not all at once, mind you, do a couple reps during your warm-up, a couple reps during your lower body strength movement, a couple during your upper body strength movement, and then finish with your accessory work from the first step with your lat pull-downs or your rows. So just do these single reps in between your rest periods for everything else, and throw a couple in during your mobility warm-up as well. For someone who can only do 1 rep, adding this in each day and doing, let's say on the low end 7 sets, so 7 to 10, 21 to 30 total reps is a ton of work for someone under 1 rep count at this point. If you stay focused on getting those single reps in and tacking your accessory work or your iso holds onto the end of your session, you'll be moving up towards doing 2, 3, 5 reps in no time. It'll probably just be a matter of weeks, honestly. Stick with this approach until you can do at least 5. And then you might be able to start to treat the chin-up and the pull-up more like a typical exercise at that point, where you maybe do 4 sets of 5, 5 sets of 5, something like that. Okay, so what if you are ready for weighted pull-ups? Maybe you think you're ready to start pushing things a little harder. If you can consistently perform 10 or more strict pull-ups, maybe even on a few consecutive sets, and you do 3 sets of 10, you're a prime candidate to start pushing your weighted pull-up numbers. I should also note that progressing the pull-up is not necessary. As far as I know, there's no sporting endeavor that requires testing max rep pull-up. Body weight max reps is a component of some testing. But there's really no need to progress this movement. It's more if you choose this to be an indicated movement for you, how would you go about progressing it? So you can still just use this as an assistance exercise, though don't get me wrong. Just because you can do 10 pull-ups doesn't mean you should start doing weighted pull-ups. It doesn't mean you should start going to failure all the time. If you're focused more on like the deadlift or the power clean or something else as a pulling exercise, that's totally fine. You can continue to just do some sets of some reps. But if you are interested in progressing this movement for its own sake, where would I have you start? So, progressing the pull-up falls in 2 camps. Progressing your max single set, your max body weight reps, and progressing your weighted reps. Thankfully, we can do both concurrently. So at the stage where I would recommend you to do would be to start alternating your body weight sessions and weighted sessions. Weighted sessions just using like a dip belt with a chain. Some folks will use the dumbbell between the legs approach as well. I prefer the dip belt because it allows you to make smaller incremental jumps. Your gym should have 2.5 pound plates that fit on the bar. You can use those in your dip belt to make small progress on the weighted pull-up as you go. So most folks, this would be 2 sessions a week, weighted session and a body weight session. If you are training the pull-up 3 times a week, you may be able to alternate weighted, body weight, weighted 1 week, and then the next week body weight, weighted, body weight. This will take us full pretty quick, though. You'll probably run out of steam doing weighted pull-ups that often pretty quickly. So if you do want to go with a 3 times a week route, I would recommend probably doing 1 weighted session and 2 body weight sessions. Or a session of body weight, a session of weighted, and then an auxiliary session where you do some rowing, like a just supported row or dumbbell or something. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of what those actual sessions would look like. So on the weighted pull-up, what I would recommend would be to progress a standard linear 3 sets of 5 for as long as possible. So start really light. So let's say you're going to probably need 2 warm-up sets. So maybe you do your body weight for a few reps. You do like 5 or 10 pounds for a few reps. And then honestly, 10-15 pounds is probably a good place to start for a lot of people. I want you guys to start as light as possible on this to give you as much room as you need to progress. You want to progress this for as long as possible. Just add 2.5 pounds per session. So remember, you're still alternating with body weight. That would be your first weighted session, 15 pounds for 3 sets of 5. The next one would be 17.5 for 3 sets of 5. The next one would be 20 for 3 sets of 5. And progress that for as long as you can, alternating with the body weight sessions as well. So this will add up really quickly. I know 2.5 pounds doesn't sound like a lot, but if you could add 10 pounds to your weighted pull-up after a couple of months, like that's a sizable increase, right? If you could, like I'd be happy to make that progress in a year, basically. So chip away on your 3x5 for as long as you can. You're going to get to a point where adding weight to your 3x5 is no longer feasible. At this point, what I would like you to do would be to start alternating every second or third weighted session. So remember, you're still doing body weight sessions, but your weighted sessions every second or third. You're going to not do your 3 sets of 5. Instead, you're going to do a top set. So you would do a rep max, like a 5 rep max, a 3 rep max, or 1 rep max, something to start tracking your progress with. In between those rep max sessions, you're still going to do like 1 or 2 3x5 sessions. And at this point, you don't need to worry about progressing the 3x5 session as much. Just move the weight up when it feels good. If you need to stick to the same weight for 2-3 sessions, don't stress about it, because now you have that top set day, and that becomes the gauge of your progress. Alternating between those two is pretty much all you'll ever need for weighted pull-ups. Build to a heavy or do moderate rep range for a few sets across will take you so far with the weighted pull-up. So we have our weighted tier of movements here. For both for people training the weighted pull-up and for people training for a body weight pull-up, I would recommend keeping a body weight day, and you need both. So what would your body weight day look like in this setting? You got a few options. The first one that I would recommend would be a muscular endurance session where you would do 3 sets near failure with 90 seconds to 2 minutes rest between sets. In this setting, that first set is probably about what your PR would be, your best set of body weight reps, and then you can expect some deterioration from there. So maybe you do 15, 12, and 10 with 90 seconds rest. The next time around, rather than try to PR that first set, absolutely go for max on the first set. If you get 16 or 17, great. If not, just try to add a rep to the second or third set as your progression. So 15, 12, 10 could become 15, 13, 10, or 15, 12, 11. Some kind of configuration that gets you 1 or 2 more reps than the last time you did that session. You could also just do a typical sets and reps approach, right? So if you don't feel like doing something hard, maybe you have a bit of a rotation in place for your body weight days, similar to what you have for your weighted days. Your body weight rotation, there's 3 things that I would incorporate here. 3 sets of failure, some kind of standard set and rep protocol, like 3 to 5 sets of 8 to 12, and then a timed parameter. So maybe you track 50 reps for time, or you track max reps in 5 minutes. Something like that adds a bit of a conditioning component to it and gives you one other variable to work with. Between those 3 body weight sessions and those 2 weighted sessions alternating, you could probably make almost infinite progress on the pull-up. I would be very shocked to meet anyone who would need more variance in their pull-up than that. If you're training 3 days a week, like I said, incorporate some rows. So you could have your weighted day, your body weight day, and a day where you focus on horizontal pulling. That'll take you very far. As you increase the top end strength on the pull-up, on your weighted days, your body weight reps should follow suit as long as your body weight isn't changing tremendously in that time. Of course, if you have a big fluctuation in body weight, that's going to change your pull-up performance a lot. So stick with the basics here. Do your 3x5 for as long as possible. Do your muscular endurance for as long as possible. Once those things start to peter out, include the variations we talked about. Include the top set, include the time sets of body weight reps, and just watch your pull-up numbers skyrocket. This movement does progress very slow, so don't be in a rush to make PRs with it. But if you're diligent about these methods, you'll get to a very impressive body weight set and very impressive weighted pull-up. Following that simple template will take you very, very far. That's all I have for today, guys, in terms of our movement pattern series. Today we're focusing on vertical pulling with a specific focus on the strict pull-ups. So remember to follow us on all our social media and subscribe to the link below. Thanks for watching and happy chinning.
PSP Kingston, the health and wellness provider for the military community.